Should marijuana be legal? California is getting ready to vote on that very issue, and that it also has a law enforcement divided in that state. On one side for you, we've got a group of police officers, judges, and prosecutors that say legalizing pot, it's a good idea. On the other side, a group of former DEA and other officials that say just the opposite.
Safety in the streets will be jeopardized on the highways, in the workplace, everywhere. Proposition 19 is simply a pathway not to paradise, but to disaster.
Stephen Downing is a former deputy chief with the LAPD, and he's in favor of legalizing marijuana. Richard Weinblatt is a former police chief in North Carolina, and he opposes the effort to legalize pot. Stephen, let's start with you. We heard from a former DEA official there. In fact, all of the former administrators from the DEA over the course of 3 decades say this is not a good idea. Why is it?
Look, the White House just said that 65 to 70% of drug profits for the cartels come from the sale of marijuana. It seems only reasonable to realize that we did away with alcohol prohibition, and that did away with organized crime, the Al Capones and his ilk. The same thing would happen if we regulated and taxed marijuana. Proposition 19 is smart law enforcement, period.
Okay, well, let's move over to look at the other side here. And Richard, the argument being made by LEAP and others, LEAP is the Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, where Stephen is from. Stephen, Richard, what they're saying is that law enforcement officers are spending too much time trying to undertake the enforcement of marijuana laws. And number two, it just costs them too much money. So why not just legalize this?
Well, here's the problem. If you remove that, you start going down that slippery slope. As Stephen knows, we spend a huge portion of our time responding to calls for police service that involve substance abuse. Alcohol being a big one, okay, and that's legal. So now, right behind it are other substances. So you make them legal, that's going to have them probably catch up to alcohol. So we want to get rid of that, kind of like what we did with seatbelts. I'd rather have a combination of enforcement and attitude shifting in society so that a lot more people are wearing seatbelts, which of course it's illegal not to wear your seatbelt, and the attitudes have shifted over the years and seatbelt compliance has gone up.
Richard, seatbelts might be a little bit different when we talk about marijuana. Another point being made by those who support this, they say, you know, cartels have led to a lot of crime. There's a lot of revenue, potential tax revenue as well, that's going to these cartel leaders. Why not take control of it, reduce the violence, and bring in more revenue during a time where we are struggling when we take a look at the government's revenue side?
Well, if you take away the demand, you're going to take away that revenue. So if you start to get people to have a paradigm shift, to think about it differently, it'll work. If you start to make them like it, it's a gateway drug. Now they're going to not only just use that small amount that California wants to legalize under Proposition 19, but they're going to start using a bigger amount, and they're going to start chasing the high, chasing the dragon,
Richard,
and going for bigger stuff.
I want to build off that point you're making and go to Stephen, who supports this law. Yeah, what about this leading to greater addiction, yet more costs of enforcement, and other issues that are related to the increased use of drugs?
That's the scare tactics that have been used all along. You know, when we first outlawed the use of marijuana, the scare tactic was that Negroes and Mexicans and Orientals were going to go wild and rape white women. Well, this myth-making, these kinds of scare tactics are horrible. There's just no truth to that. There's no proof of it. The Proposition 19 doesn't take away penalties for driving under the influence. Proposition 19 doesn't provide for you to come to work high. That can still be prohibited. Last year, there were 60,000 arrests for marijuana possession in California. Those 60,000 arrests had to be processed by police officers. Police officers had to go into the station and book their evidence. In a day and age when almost every police department in the United States is behind on testing rape kits, we're testing simple possession of marijuana so that we can do our prosecution in court, so that we can send the violator to a treatment program, spend all that money, use all those resources. Millions of people are smoking marijuana today, just
Stephen?
like millions of people were drinking alcohol during Capone's time.
Stephen Downing?
We need to stop that.
I thank you for joining us. We have to go. I wish we had more time. Richard Weinblatt, also, I wish we had more time to discuss this. Hopefully there's a compromise somewhere in this. We appreciate you both. Prop 19 happening in California. We'll see how that goes. Thank you both.